It's Global News and Zuma Nigeria. Many thanks for joining me. The news says North Korea launches third cruise missile test within a week. ASEAN calls for Myanmar-led crisis solution post-coup. Leak of Trump's tax records gets 5-year prison term. Alzheimer's transmission found in halted treatment cases, and Biden cautions of Iran after Jordan attack. In less than a week, North Korea has carried out 3 tests of its cruise missiles, firing the weapons into the waters off its west coast. The Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a statement, South Korea's military detected numerous unknown cruise missiles launched into the West Sea of North Korea about 7 o'clock local time. South Korean and U.S. intelligence agencies were analyzing the data. It added, North Korea is not barred from testing cruise missiles under long-standing United Nations sanctions enforced over its nuclear program, and has already carried out 2 tests over the past week. Report on Monday said leader Kim Jong-un over the weekend had guided the launch of submarine-launched strategic cruise missiles known as the Powassol 331, a few days after South Korea detected several cruise missiles being launched from the country's west coast. Pyongyang has forged ahead with weapons testing amidst growing tensions on the peninsula as Kim modernizes the country's military and develops more sophisticated weaponry. Since the beginning of the year, it has also fired what is said was a solid fuel hypersonic ballistic missile as well as nuclear-capable underwater attack drone. Meanwhile, Japan, South Korea and the United States have been increasing their joint military drills, which Kim portrays as invasion rehearsals, and perfecting their deterrence strategies built around nuclear-capable U.S. assets. Kim has declared South Korea his country's principal enemy in recent weeks and shut down agencies detected to reunification and outrage. Now, Southeast Asian foreign ministers have called for a Myanmar-owned and land solution to the crisis in Myanmar that started when the military seized power in a coup 3 years ago and has left thousands dead. The call from the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, followed a meeting on Monday of the 10-member grouping's foreign ministers in Laos, which was attended by an official from Myanmar for the first time in 2 years. The ministers also gave their support to attempts by Oluwen Kyo Kitikong, Laos special envoy on the crisis, in reaching out to parties concerned. Myanmar was plunged into crisis on February 1st, 2021, when the generals ousted the elected government of civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi and seized power, reacting with brutal force to mass protests against its rule and sparking an armed uprising. According to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, a local monetary group, over 4,400 civilians have been killed since, and the military is holding closely 20,000 people in detention. ASEAN, which Myanmar joined in 1997, has been leading international diplomatic efforts in Myanmar, but has made little advancement since launching the so-called 5-point consensus to end the crisis at a summit attended by coup leader Min Aung Hlaing shortly after power grab. The generals have disregarded the plan and have been banned from attending ASEAN summits and ministerial meetings. Laos, a one-party communist state on Myanmar's northeastern border, is chairing ASEAN this year. Earlier this month, Kitikong journeyed to Myanmar, where he met Min Aung Hlaing, and the two deliberated efforts of the government to ensure peace and stability, according to reports from Myanmar. Neither ASEAN nor Laos have commented on the trip, and it's not clear whether he met any anti-coup groups. The conflict has heightened since an alliance of anti-coup forces and ethnic groups started a major offensive towards the end of last year in northern Shan State and western Rakhine. The alliance claims to have overrun dozens of military outposts and taken control of key towns. Over 2.6 million people have been forced from their homes over 3 years of fighting. The military government has shown no willingness to open talks with its opponents and describes them as terrorists. It has also accused ASEAN of interfering in its internal affairs. The man who stole and leaked ex-President Donald Trump and thousands of others' tax records have been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Charles Littlejohn, 38, in October pleaded guilty to one count of unauthorized revelations of income tax returns. He stole Trump's tax returns along with tax data of thousands of the nation's wealthiest people while working for a consulting firm with contracts with the Internal Revenue Service, according to his plea agreement. Littlejohn leaked the information to 2 news outlets and deleted the documents from his IRS-assigned laptop before returning it, and covered the rest of his digital tracks by deleting places where he initially stored the information. Judge Anna Reyes emphasized the gravity of the crime, saying numerous times that it resulted to an attack against the U.S. and its legal foundation. What you did in attacking the sitting president of the United States was an attack on our constitutional democracy, Reyes said. We're talking about someone who pulled off the biggest heist in IRS history. The judge compared Littlejohn's actions to those of the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack, noting that your actions were also a threat to our democracy. It endangers the same fear that January 6 does, she added. Prosecutors said Littlejohn went through great lengths to steal the tax records on notice, exploiting system loopholes, downloading data to an Apple iPod, and uploading the information on a private website he later deleted. Reyes was also critical of the Justice Department's decision to only bring one count against Littlejohn. The fact that he did what he did and he's facing one felony count, I have no words for, the judge said. Prosecutors argue that the one count covers the multitude of Littlejohn's thefts and leaks. A free press and public engagement with the media are critical to any healthy democracy, but stealing and leaking private, personal tax information strips individuals of the legal protection of their most sensitive data, prosecutors wrote in a court filing recommending Littlejohn by sentencing to the maximum of 5 years in prison. Littlejohn said in court on Monday, "I acted out of a sincere misguided belief," adding that he was serving the country and that people had a right to the tax information. "We as a country make the best decisions when we are all properly informed," Littlejohn said. He added that he was aware of the potential consequences of his actions and knew he will one day be here in federal courts facing those consequences. "My actions undermine the fragile faith in government institutions," the U.S., Littlejohn added. Now on health matters, a new study suggests early onset dementia symptoms in 5 adults may be linked to a now discontinued human growth hormone medical treatment that they received decades ago as children. The study, published on Monday, provides the first reported evidence of medically acquired Alzheimer's disease in living people. In these cases, the patient's early onset dementia symptoms may be the result of the possible transmission of amyloid beta protein, which is a major component of Alzheimer's disease when it forms plaques in the brain. Abnormal buildup of the protein amyloid beta in the brain is connected with Alzheimer's, and the latest studies suggest that amyloid beta contamination may have a connection with the early dementia symptoms experienced by the patients in the study. The study findings do not suggest that Alzheimer's disease can be contagious or spread like viral or bacterial infections, for instance, but they raise fresh questions about Alzheimer's and other degenerative diseases. John Collins, lead author of the study and director of the University College London Institute of Prion Diseases, said that, "I should emphasize these are very rare occurrences, and the majority of this relates to medical procedures that are no longer used." All 5 adults had growth hormone deficiency as children and received pituitary growth hormones prepared in a specific way from cadavers. The pituitary gland is located at the base of the brain, and human growth hormone, or HGH, is a natural hormone the gland makes and releases, promoting growth in children. Between 1959 and 1985, these patients were among the at least 1,848 people in the United Kingdom who were treated with human growth hormone derived from a cadaver's pituitary gland, according to the study. At the time, this treatment also was used in other parts of the world, including the United States. The treatment approach was stopped after cases of a sporadic brain disorder called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease were found to be associated with the administration of contaminated human growth hormone, from cadavers. The new study suggests that repeated exposure over manifold years to treatment with cadaver-derived HDH that had been contaminated by both proteins associated with Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease and amyloid beta seeds co-transmit Alzheimer's disease. Prions are proteins that can act as transmissible agents of neurodegenerative diseases. The researchers wrote in the study that Alzheimer's disease may be transmissible in certain circumstances in a way similar to conditions known as prion diseases, a family of rare progressive neurodegenerative disorders known to be associated with prion proteins, including Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease or CJD. Although Alzheimer's is not a prion disease, some separate research suggests that two proteins that are hallmarks in Alzheimer's disease, amyloid beta and tau, behave like prions. It looks like what's going on in Alzheimer's disease is very similar in many respects to what happens in the human prion disease, like CJD, Collins said in the news briefing. It does raise implications about therapeutic approaches to Alzheimer's disease. The U.S.'s reaction to the drone attack on Sunday in Jordan that killed and injured U.S. service members is likely to be more powerful than earlier American retaliatory strikes in Iraq and Syria, officials said, according to reports, though the Pentagon and the White House are being careful not to telegraph the administration's plans. President Joe Biden is under mounting pressure to respond in a way that stops these attacks for good. Iran-backed militants have aimed U.S. military facilities in Iraq and Syria over 160 times since October, and many Republican lawmakers have called for the U.S. to hit inside Iran directly to send a clear message. But the major challenge now for the Biden administration is how to respond to the drone strike, the deadliest attack on U.S. forces in the region since the bombing at Abbey Gate killed 13 U.S. service members in the closing days of the Afghanistan withdrawal without triggering a regional war. The U.S. has in recent months carried out numerous strikes aiming Iranian proxies, weapons depots in Iraq and Syria. None of those strikes have prevented the militants till date, whose 165 attacks have wounded over 120 U.S. service members across the region since October. Retired Lieutenant General Mark Hetling said the deaths of U.S. service members certainly crossed the president's red line, and both officials and analysts are expectant of a more robust reaction that is not essentially limited to one country or one day. But officials have suggested it is unlikely the U.S. will strike within Iran. Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, said the environment in the Middle East is as dangerous as it's been in the region since at least 1973 and arguably even before that. Blinken added that a U.S. response could be multi-leveled, come in stages, and be sustained over time. The Biden administration could decide to again strike the militant groups in Iraq, Syria, or both countries, and could also target the leadership of the regional militias. In at least one case in early January, the U.S. targeted a senior member of Harakat al-Nujaba, an Iranian proxy that has attacked U.S. forces. An offensive cyber attack is another option, officials noted. U.S. officials said the U.S. is being cautious not to be too precise about the origin of the drone or which militants launch it in order to preserve some element of surprise when the U.S. responds. U.S. officials have said that only the Iranian proxy group Kataib Hezbollah appears to have supported the strike. On more stories now in Africa, ruling South Africa's ANC suspends Zuma's membership. On Monday in South Africa, the National Executive Committee of the ruling ANC announced it had decided to summarily suspend Jacob Zuma as a member. According to reports, the former president will be hauled before the party's disciplinary committee. Zuma publicly announced he will campaign and vote for the newly established MK party last December. In endorsing the party, Zuma said he could not support the ANC of the President Cyril Ramaphosa. The ANC constitution, however, states that disciplinary proceedings may be summoned and instituted against any member or public representative who joins or supports any organization or party other than the ANC or its alliance partners COSATU, the CACP, and SANCO. The country's general election scheduled this year is likely to be highly contested because the ruling ANC, which has governed the country since Nelson Mandela became South Africa's first democratically elected president in 1994, faces innumerable challenges. Mixed reactions as three countries move to quit ECOWAS. In the capital of Niger, Niamey, the decision taken by the heads of state of Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso to quit the regional bloc, the economic community of West African states, has well been received by the civilians in the region. The leadership of the three countries accuses the West African regional bloc of conspiring with major powers to destabilize their countries. They also blame the illegal, inhumane and illegitimate sanctions enforced on their countries, which are undermining the lives of their populations. The three states are committed to build a new bloc of cooperation around the ESA. While the landlocked nature of these countries makes it hard for them to flourish, some countries have offered to come to their aid, thanks to their access to the sea. For the time being, ECOWAS says it is open to negotiated solutions. Moving forward, Meloni unveils development plan at Africa Summit. Giorgia Meloni, Italian premier, opened a summit of African leaders on Monday intended at demonstrating Italy's big development plan for the continent that her government hopes will shoot migration flows, diversify sources of energy, and forge a novel relationship between Europe and Africa. But the plan got a lukewarm and cautious reception initially, with African Union Commission Chairman Moussa Faki Mahamat telling the summit that African countries would have liked to have been consulted before Italy rolled out its plan. 24 African leaders, top European Union and United Nations officials and representatives from international lending institutions were in Rome for the summit, the first major event of Italy's group of 7 presidency. Italy, which for decades has been ground zero in Europe's migration debate, has been endorsing its development plan as a way to fashion security and economic conditions that will create jobs in Africa and discourage its young people from making dangerous migrations across the Mediterranean Sea. In her opening, Meloni charted a series of pilot projects in individual countries that she said will allow Africa to become a major exporter of energy to Europe, to aid dissuade it of its dependence on Russian energy following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Meloni, Italy's first hard-right leader since the end of World War II, has made restricting migration a priority of her government, but her first year in power saw a big jump in the numbers of people who arrived on Italy's shores, with some 160,000 last year. The government's plan, named after Enrico Mattei, founder of state-controlled oil and gas giant Eni, seeks to expand cooperation with Africa beyond energy, but in a non-predatory way. The plan involves pilot projects in areas such as education, healthcare, water, sanitation, agriculture, and infrastructure. Italy, which under totalitarianism was a colonial power in North Africa, has formally hosted ministerial-level African meetings, but Monday's summit held at the Italian Senate to prove the commitment of all Italian public institutions to the project marks the first time it's under the head of state or government level. The summit includes presentations by Italian ministers specifying several aspects of the plan. A gala dinner hosted by the Italian President Sergio Mattarella was held on Sunday night. As the summit got underway, Italian Green and opposition lawmakers planned a counter-conference at Italy's lower chamber of parliament to criticize the Mattei plan as a neo-colonial empty box that seeks to again exploit Africa's natural resources. Alongside the Mattei plan, Meloni's government has forged controversial deals with individual countries to try to alleviate the migration burden on Italy. An EU-backed deal with Tunisia intends to control departures through economic development projects and legal migration opportunities, while a bilateral deal with Albania calls for the establishment of centers in Albania to process asylum applications for Italy-bound migrants rescued at sea. Now we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll bring you more stories. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Stories from Nigeria says cleric urges FG to declare state of emergency on insecurity. The visionary of Throne Room Trust Ministry Kafanchan, Apostle Emmanuel Nuhukuri, lamenting over the security challenges in the country, has urged the federal government to declare a state of emergency on crime and terrorism in the country for the restoration of law and order in Nigeria. Kure also challenged President Bola Tinubu to issue a marching order to the military and other security agencies to quickly tame the activities of criminals who derive pleasure in killing innocent souls while speaking in Kafanchan. He also advised the government to provide advanced weapons for the military to confront the criminals, whom he said are using better and more innovative weapons to carry out their nefarious activities. Kure also challenged state governors in the north-central states, including Kaduna, to consider creating a unifying security structure within the confines of the law, just like their counterparts in the southwest who established Amotekun to fight crimes and criminality in the region. He bewailed the slow start of President Tinubu's led federal government in resolving the immediate problems confronting the country, even after all legal tussles had been concluded by the Supreme Court. Apostle Kure, who is also the chairman of Southern Kaduna Christian Leaders Association, cautioned that except the government started to be deliberate in solving the scary challenges the masses are presently facing, particularly security of lives and property of the people, God can decide to impose his own changes due to the Christ daily that is bombarding the heavens. And finally, on the news, on economy, CBN ejects $500 million to clear FX backlog. On Monday, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, said it pumped an additional $500 million into the foreign exchange market FX. This comes just a week after it declared that it had so far disbursed approximately $2 billion across pivotal sectors like manufacturing, aviation, and petroleum. A statement signed by Hakama Ali, the acting director of the Corporate Communications Department at the CBN, said the management of the CBN is committed to settling all legitimate foreign exchange backlogs within a short time frame. The CBN had started implementing an inclusive strategy to boost liquidity in the Nigerian foreign exchange markets in the short, medium, and long term, according to her. In addressing the recent forex market reforms, Mrs. Ali repeated the bank's aims of streamlining exchange rates, fostering transparency, and minimizing arbitrage opportunities. She expressed confidence that a stable exchange rate will instill investors' trust and attract foreign investment. Mrs. Ali urged market participants to adhere to regulations, stressing that transparency in the market will ensure fair exchange rate, determination, and overall stability for businesses and individuals. Another look at top stories. North Korea launches third cruise missile test within a week. ASEAN calls for Myanmar-led crisis solution post-coup. Leaker of Trump's tax records gets 5-year prison term. Alzheimer's transmission found in Holter treatment cases, and Biden cautious of Iran after Jordan attack. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Ranky.